The final showdown of what is truth and good versus evil and what is wrong versus our Creator's righteousness is upon us. Today, which is September 20th on Satan's calendar, it is the first day of the 7th month in our Elohiym's restored 30-day month that he sent his sign of Jonah to testify to. It is the memorial of acclamations, or the memento of shoutings, that most refer to as the Feast of Trumpets because of some deliberate translation errors in Leviticus 23 and in Numbers 29. Leviticus 23, verse 23 says, "And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath throne, or day of rest, a memorial or memento of shoutings, or of acclamations, a holy assembly. You shall do no work of any kind, and you shall offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh." Sometimes the scriptures record this shouting or announcement to be an alarm for war, and sometimes it is a shouting of joy. This day is the anniversary of our Messiah's birth, and this year it is serving as the benchmark of the final 50-day count to the day of Yahweh's vengeance. I have been led to speak all along through the testimony that he sent me with, that the truth would not go out to the world without it going out on the wings of great calamity. Satan has his servants set up with their twisted nets and snares set up to keep nearly all of the inhabitants of the world in his various deceptions when the calamity does erupt on a full scale. He has his false prophets and false shepherds and false messiahs poised for the final showdown, and our Elohiym set him up to set it up this way. He set our life up in the flesh to be a testing and a proving ground in order to purify and to refine those who would hearken to him to be made in his image. He has prophesied through his servant Ezekiel and his servant the Apostle John that only 3.333% of the inhabitants of the world will be delivered through the coming time of affliction. In order to be of this small remainder of people, you are going to have to side with the truth and embrace it with your whole heart. I have been sent to testify to the truth, just as the first witness was sent to do. John recorded Yeshua saying in John 18:37 to Pilate, he says, "You ask how I am a king? Into this cause I was born, and into this cause I came into the world, in order to be a witness to the truth." The truth is our Elohiym's word that he gave to us to mold and fashion us in his image. Yeshua said this plainly the night before he spoke this to Pilate. This was recorded in John 17:17, where he also said that his Father's word is what sanctifies us or sets us apart to him. His word is the measuring rod that we must measure all things with, because all will be judged by it in the last day. John recorded Yeshua speaking this as well. This is recorded in chapter 12, verse 48. Just read that. He that sets me aside and does not seize what I have spoken has one that judges him. The word that I have spoken, the same will judge him in the last day. And of course, when he says he that sets me aside, he was made to be his Father's word in the flesh. Because I have not spoken out from myself, but the Father which sent me, he gave me commandment what to say and what to speak. His Father also has spoken his word through his servants the prophets. For that matter, Yeshua was a prophet as well, so he's spoken his word through his servants the prophets in general. Yeshua said that he was not sent to get rid of one punctuation mark from the Torah of the prophets until heaven and earth pass away. He said that one would be sent in the spirit of Elijah to restore all things. What all things do you think he was talking about? You're going to need to use our Creator's word to determine if I am this servant or not. And if I am not him, then you're going to need to determine who is. If I were you, I would use his word for this determination and not rely on your own understanding or on what you have been taught by men who do not live his word. It really is this simple. Malachi recorded Yahweh saying that this servant would be sent like Elijah with the cry to remember the Torah that was given through Moses with the statutes and judgments. He said that this servant would bring the cry to return to him, to return to having hearts like the patriarchs' hearts, so that their hearts would be turned back towards you. He recorded our Elohiym saying that this servant would bring forth a cry for you to lift up an offering in righteousness to him. The offering that I claim is this offering is to return to him through his Torah with the statutes and judgments, and to cry aloud or shout with me to warn others to do the same thing, or dying they will die. Search the scriptures and see if this work that I have been sent with is not a perfect match to what is recorded by the prophets. The prophets of old prophesied why Yahweh is going to send his wrath upon the inhabitants of the world at the time of the end. They recorded why a double portion of it will be heaped upon the scattered descendants of Israel. It is because you have rejected his Torah, and you have profaned his Sabbaths, and you have put no difference between the clean and the unclean. His word testifies that the English-speaking people of the world in Christianity are primarily the scattered descendants of Israel. Some of you write me and tell me that you are Gentiles and that therefore you're not bound by the Torah. Even if you were, and you are not Israel's descendants, his word says that he has one Torah for both Israel and those who sojourn with them. Israel means those whom he gives rule to, or those whom he empowers. If you were not of the descendants of Jacob, who was given the name Israel, you still would need to be engrafted into his descendants, because this is whom our Elohiym is building his eternal family through. And if you are engrafted into Israel, then you are a sojourner with them, and you have the same one Torah that he gave for both Israel and those who sojourn with them. His word says this. He set it up for the descendants of Israel to take his truth to the world, but he knew that you and your fathers would not accomplish this. His word says that you would depart from it. He commanded us to know the Song of Moses and to teach it to our children, to testify to this and to testify to why he would send his wrath upon those who would not return to him through his Torah. If you want to believe and follow the abomination of desolation, Saul of Tarsus, instead of believing and following our Messiah who lived by his father's Torah, this is certainly your choice to do so. Dying you will die. But if you will turn from your rebellion, then Yahweh Elohiym will deliver you into the millennium, where Satan and his rebellious crew of misfits will be bound. And he will turn the water that you will need to be baptized under into his son's blood to atone for you. The commanded observance of the Day of Atonement is the 10th day of this 7th month. This day will fall on September 29th this year on Satan's calendar, but we are commanded to begin our affliction the night before at sundown. This day will mark the 40-day mark to November 9th. Then the 7-day Feast of Temporary Dwellings begins on October 4th and ends on the 10th. Leviticus 23 records that the 8th day following this 7-day feast is to be a special Sabbath. This day is October 11th and is day 1 of the second tier to the 1 month or 30 days of the Hosea and Zechariah prophecies, where Yahweh says he will bring down the false shepherds and the scattered flock of Israel. In lieu of this 8th day high day and in lieu of the 30-day prophecy, and it is incredible how 30 days after the correct timing of the feast is the 21st day of the 8th month, and which is the last day of the Jeroboam's profane feast. Jeroboam changed the feast to the 8th month. He made this change after he led the 10 tribes of Judah, 10 tribes away from Judah and Benjamin. What a perfect fit for Elohiym to choose this day for the day of his wrath in lieu of the prophecies of him hating Israel's feast. One of these prophecies is found in Jeremiah 51, starting verse 37. And Babylon will become as a heap, a dwelling place. And of course Babylon's referring to the captivity that Israel was sent into. A dwelling place for dragons, an astonishment and a hissing without inhabitant. The lion will roar and the lion's whelp will growl together. In heat or in hot indignation I will appoint their feastings or their banquets that they rejoice in and are drunken in and are asleep in. I will appoint their feastings a perpetual sleep, he says, that they will not wake from, saith Yahweh. I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams with the he-goats. In Isaiah 1:13 and 14, he says that he hates all of the vain offerings and the perversions of his new moons and his Sabbaths and his other appointed times. He says that they are an abomination to him. In Amos 5, he says that he despises your perversions of his feast. And in Amos 8, he says that he will turn them into mourning on the day that the day goes dark. In Malachi, he says that they are like dung or like feces on your face to him. How much more so are the abominable celebrations like Christmas and Easter before his face? Well, you're about ready to find out if you do not turn from them. Some of you might have already turned from the obvious abominations like Christmas and Easter, but you are still swimming in other abominations like the Saturday Sabbath. Others of you might think that I am wrong about the restored 30-day month. Therefore, you think that I am wrong about the timing of the Sabbath for this 3-month period that we are in, that ends on the last day of the Feast of Temporary Dwellings. This would mean that you think that I am wrong about the timing of today's memorial of acclamations and the rest of the high days of the 7th month. This is certainly your choice to think this. My conviction that the 30-day month has been restored is founded in the sign of Jonah that our Messiah said would be the only sign that would be given. And like I keep saying in these videos, this sign proves our Elohim's word, and his word proves this sign. It is remarkable how it ties his feast together with the timing of his son's murder and resurrection, and with other events like the timing of the events of the flood, and with the backup Passover opportunity in the 2nd month. It is remarkable how all of the details in this sign testify to a 30-day month and to where we're at in time. Yeshua prophesied that this sign would be applied to the time of the end when he said in Matthew 12:41, he said, the men of Nineveh will stand up in the judgment, he says, with this generation, and will condemn it because they repented at the preaching of the sign of Jonah. He said this right after he said that the only sign that would be given is the sign of Jonah, linking the timing of his burial and resurrection to the timing of the end time judgment. The first tier of the sign of him was him being in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights, and it proves much. The way that it fits into other prophecies and into the timing of the Passover, that the Passover lamb is killed, proves our Elohim's calendar. It proves that Judaism's tradition of each day beginning at sundown is a perversion. It helps prove the lunar-based Sabbath. It proves that the Saturday Sabbath is an abomination, just like the Sunday Sabbath or any other fixed day on Satan's calendar is. Some of you have written me and asked me, how can I ignore the cycles of the moon when his word says that he gave them to us to use to determine his appointed times like his Sabbath? The answer is simple. It is because I believe his word, that I put my faith in what his word testifies to. His word testifies that the months were always 30 days in length before he changed the rotation during the days of Hezekiah. His word testifies that he has sent me to restore all things. But this by itself is not the reasoning for my conviction. My certainty lies in the 3rd tier to the sign of Jonah that proves it. It is the details that are found in his word, along with Yeshua's prophecy that he would be in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights, that proves that he was dead for 84 hours or 3.5 days. It is incredible how the prophecies lined up with the timing of the events, like the timing of the flood and the red horse prophecy, and how these things lined up with the 84 days like they did in all of the scenarios. You have to go back and listen to the videos. I can't address all of those things in each of these videos because it's a pretty detailed sign. It is remarkable how the beginning of the Feast of First Fruits on July 19th is 84 days from the end of the Feast of Temporary Dwellings on October 10th. And then add to this how the timing from the time he led me to scatter the last third of my hair on the 21st day of the 4th month was 90 days or 3 30-day months to October 10th. Then couple this with how the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread was also 90 days or 3 30-day months from when I scattered the hair, and this is astounding. The 3 months and 3 months, and this last 84-day match is a 3rd tier to the 3 days and 3 nights prophecy. Not only are there 3 tiers to the sign of Jonah relating to how this prophecy has unfolded, there also were 3 tiers of 3 and 3 within it. Jonah in the belly of the fish being one, Yeshua in the tomb, and now this 3 months and 3 months that proves the restoration of all things. The different 3 tiers to the prophecies that have unfolded in these last days are awesomely orchestrated and can only be done so by an all-powerful creator that has everything in his control. Is it a coincidence that there were 3 stories or 3 tiers on the ark that Noah built? Is it a coincidence that the measurements and the description of the temple that Ezekiel recorded include a section with 3 tiers for the priest? If you want to see some more coincidences, go through the measurements that Ezekiel recorded, and you will find in them a code for the numbers in the prophecy that I have been sent with, along with other numbers that have been significant in Elohim's building of his family. Not only will you find the 3 tiers, you will also find measurements like 50 by 500 by 50, which is symbolic of the 550 days that followed the January 15, 2011 Japan tsunami prophecy that led up to July 19th. You will find things like 30 chambers with a design of 3 on one side and 3 on the other side, and other references to 3 on one side and 3 on the other. This sounds a lot like 3 months on one side of the scattering of the hair and 3 months on the other to me. You will also find chambers lined up 3 on top of each other in rows of 30. This sounds an awful lot like 3 30-day months that add up to 90 days. You will find 7 steps leading up to the chambers. Is it a coincidence that one of the earlier videos that I was led to post was entitled The 7 Steps to Being Born Again? You will also find in his measurements that there are also 8 steps leading up to the outer court. Are these 8 steps a coincidence in lieu of the 30 days beginning on the 8th day following the feast? Is it a coincidence that the Apostle John recorded that the 2 witnesses were not to measure the outer court? Is it a coincidence that all males are to be circumcised on the 8th day? There are lots of other coincidences in the measurements to the temple that were given to Ezekiel to record. There are still many things about the coming time of judgment and the timing of everything that I do not know yet. There is a prophecy found in Ezekiel 39 about the burying of the bodies for 7 months that has not been given to me to understand yet, so I do not know how this will fit into it all. It could be that this 7 months is symbolic of the 7 months between this past year's last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the last day of Jeroboam's profane feast of the 8th month. In addition to the sun going down on the day of his wrath, there is also a 7-day period where Isaiah records that the moon will be as bright as the sun and the sun will be sevenfold, that I do not know yet how it will fit into the coming days. What I do know is the significance of today, with this being the memento of shoutings and acclamations. I know that the 21st day of the 8th month is 50 days from today. I know that in Ezekiel's measurements of the temple that there was 50 cubits between the face of the entrance to the face of the inner gate. I know that the rest of the measurements that he gave in the rest of the measurements that he gave are several numbers that were coded into the prophecy that I've been sent with. And I know that if you want to be one of the 3.333% that Ezekiel prophesied would be delivered through the coming affliction, you had better get busy offering up the offering in righteousness to our Elohiym that he has called for. I often repeat Malachi 3 verses 1 through 3 in these videos. I do so because it is such a huge part of the witness against man that I was sent to testify to. If we said in Malachi 3:1, Behold, I will send my messenger to prepare the way before my face, and Yahweh will seek you, and will suddenly come to his temple. The messenger of the covenant whom I delight in will come to you, says Yahweh of hosts. Who will abide him, or sustain or provide for him the day of his coming? Who will stand when he appears? Because he is like a refiner's fire and like fuller's soap. And he will sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver, and he will purify the sons of Levi and purge them like gold and silver, so that they will offer to Yahweh an offering in righteousness. I can tell you that almost none have stood with me, and nearly all of those few who did stand with me for a season departed after July 19th did not happen in the same manner that I spoke that it would. If this is you, you departed from standing with me in spite of his word testifying that he has sent me. You departed in spite of him beginning to give the continuance of his timeline 11 days prior to July 19th. And you will even find the trivia, you will even find the number 11 in Ezekiel's measurements of the temple. You departed in spite of the 3rd tier of the sign of Jonah being given that ties his events in his word and his holy days and his prophecies together in a spectacular way. And this is a witness against you that his word really does not have a place in your hearts. If it did, you would realize that I am still standing with his word. You would realize that his word that he has put in my mouth still stands in spite of my error that I had from some previous beliefs that I still had, because he had not revealed some things yet to me as well. As far as sustaining me, like Malachi recorded here in verse 2, I have not solicited money from the public in these videos, although I have had to rely on some aid from a few people. But these few people are very few in number, and all but a couple of them have withdrawn or no longer offer their aid. And except for when I have been in absolute need, I have turned the aid that they have offered down and told the people offering it to use it to cry aloud and to spare not, to warn others. Yet our Elohiym posed the question here in this verse, not only who will stand with his servant, but also who will provide for him when he is sent. And the answer is the same to both questions. Almost none of you will. Almost none of you have. This certainly testifies to why he is sending his wrath, why it's at the door, along with the rejection to what he has sent me to restore. Will today bring forth anything on a physical plane? Will Yellowstone begin to erupt because I spoke that it would on or before the day of his wrath? Will the Third World War commence? I do not know. I do not know whether there will be a physical sign until after the Feast of Temporary Dwellings or not. I still do not know if the final 30 days will be funneled into the last 7 days or how it will unfold. I just know that today is real, and it is the real timing to this high day because the sign of Jonah testifies to it. I know that the sign of Jonah that has been given is real. Therefore, I know that Yahweh Elohim's wrath is at the door, and I know that he will repair the rotations of his luminaries once his wrath is accomplished. Until then, it is a test whether we will believe his word or not. It is a test of who will put their faith in his word and not in physical signs. Yeshua said that there will be no other sign given for a reason. It is a test on who will stand with our Elohim's messenger of the covenant that his word testifies to. It is part of the refining soap and the purifying that he has sent me with. You're going to have to stand with someone if you believe his word, because his word plainly says that one would be sent to restore all things before the day of his wrath. His word says in Daniel 10:21 that at the time of the end he will show us the truth that is recorded in his scriptures. And in the same sentence he says that only one ceases with him in these things. He tells us the name of this servant, and it is Michael. In lieu of these things, and in lieu of Malachi 3:2, if you're going to stand with the belief that if you stand with the belief that the 30-day month has not been restored, then I suggest that you find a witness that his word testifies to stand with, and that you do so quickly. You need to find a witness that has come forth with the 5-point Ezekiel 24 sign that Yahweh says is his promise. He said that when one escapes from the captivity and speaks this sign to you, you can know that it is from him. You need to find a witness that is dug out from the captivity to be assigned to you as to do as he did to fulfill the Ezekiel 12 prophecy. You need to find a witness to stand with that has turned the water into blood like he has sent me to do. You need to find a witness to stand with that has brought forth the Ezekiel 5 prophecy of shaving off of his hair and beard and burning a third of it and cutting up a third of it and scattering the last third of it into the wind. You need to find one who has not only brought forth the cry to return to the Torah with the statutes and judgments, but has also magnified them and made them honorable like the first witness did when he was sent. According to Zechariah and the Apostle John, the witness that you had better be looking for needs to be bearing the prophecy of the 7 spirits flowing out through him and the first witness, and bearing the measuring rod that the temple was built with. According to Daniel, he needs to be named Michael, as I said, and he needs to be the only one fully seizing with Yahweh in the truth that his word says he will show us at the time of the end through this servant. If I am not this Michael, then the Michael that you need to be looking for will be restoring things like the 7th year Sabbath and all of the other things that have already been restored. And he will have the spirit of Elijah, because Yeshua said that the one who would be sent to restore all things would be sent in this manner. I am not sure what this person is going to restore, though, when I've already been sent to do it. Is he going to copy the work that I have been sent with? Is there time for that? If you deny that I am this servant, then what makes you think that you would not deny one who you will think will still come, the one who you think would still come. It's insanity. I mean, the scriptures testify to the work I've been sent with. If you deny that I'm his servant, obviously you're denying anybody else that comes along with this work. And what is this servant going to restore without copying the work that I've been sent with? I keep saying him in these scenarios, but maybe you think that this Elijah will be a woman. Actually, there is at least one woman out there that I am aware of who is claiming to be this servant, and she has quite the following. Incredible. It's insanity. I am not sure how she's going to shave off her beard. Male or female, the one that you need to be looking for had better be clothed in white linen as well, because it is recorded that he will be. Isaiah recorded that the one who would bring forth the oil of joy, which is the 7 spirits, and the command to cover your heads and to not mourn the coming destruction in order to become the planting in the millennium, would be the one who would also proclaim the day and the year of Yahweh's vengeance. So you need to find a Michael who matches this description as well. And yes, the day and the year was proclaimed through the prophecies that were revealed through the restored Feast of First Fruits on July 19th, and through the continuance in his timeline that he began to give 11 days prior to it. And like I said, today is 50 days from this day. There are other matches that you're going to need to find that are discussed in these videos as well. This person is going to need to have a signature ring given to him from our Creator, like Haggai prophesied he would. If you find this match, then just maybe he will also bring forth the meaning of the red heifer statute and the Jeremiah's belt prophecy and the other statutes and prophecies that have been revealed through the one that you claim is a false prophet. Just maybe this person that you desire to find will also magnify the touching the dead statutes per Yeshua's magnification, that if you are not following after him or walking as he walked, that you are dead before his and his Father's face. Or maybe you do not think that the dead body statute magnification is true. Well, let me share with you a prophecy in Haggai 2 for the end times. Verse 11, Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, Now ask the priest concerning the Torah, saying, If a man lifts up the edge of his holy garment from his flesh, and the edge touches unto bread, or unto soup, or unto wine, or unto oil, or unto any meat, are they sanctified? And the priest answered and said, No. Then Haggai said, If an unclean creature touches any of these, will it be unclean? And the priest answered and said, It will be unclean. Haggai answered and said, Likewise, or unclean is this people, and likewise, or unclean is this nation before me, saith Yahweh. And likewise is every work of their hands unclean, and so is that which they bring before me unclean. When Yeshua said to let the dead bury their dead and to follow after him, he was clearly saying that all who are not following after him are dead. And the Torah says that we are not to touch dead bodies, or we are made unclean when we do. There is a huge spiritual lesson in this magnification. It is that we are to separate ourselves to our Elohiym, to be set apart to him from all that is unclean. Otherwise we are unclean to him, and even our good deeds and our offerings are unclean to him. Haggai prophesied this. The Michael that you need to find had better be speaking this magnification, because Yahweh's word testifies to it. And Yeshua is saying that the only way to enter into his Father's kingdom is by following after him, or walking on the same path that he walked on. And this backs us up as well. So all of you who have declared me to be a false prophet, you certainly have a needle in the haystack to look for. And you do not have long to find it, because Yahweh Elohim says that you are going to know that he has sent me. His word was not good enough proof for you, so he says in Haggai 2, he continues on a few verses later, what's going to happen? Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth, and I will overthrow the thrones of kingdoms, and I will destroy the power of the kingdoms of the heathen, and I will overthrow their chariots and those that ride in them, and the horses and their riders will fall, each man by the sword of his brother. In that day, saith Yahweh of hosts, I will bring Zerubbabel my servant, the son of Shealtiel, saith Yahweh, and I will put upon him a signature ring, because I have chosen him, saith Yahweh of hosts. So you will need to find a servant with a signature ring, like maybe the Isaiah 55:11 signature ring that I have been sent with. It might not hurt to have an event like the Japan tsunami back up this servant that you find signature ring either. No, a second Michael is not out there for you to find. There is no other reason for us being here in the flesh other than what Isaiah 55:11 testifies to. He gave us his word to accomplish molding us and fashioning us in his righteous image, because two cannot walk together in harmony unless they are agreed. This is the purpose that he sent it. He is not building a family of rebellious children to inhabit eternity with him. You will either have to turn from your rebellion to him, or you will cry out for the rocks to fall on you soon. You will cast your gold and your silver into the streets, because they will not deliver you. Many of you will blaspheme him for the calamity it's being heaped upon you, instead of facing accountability for your rebellion to him. Others of you will cry out to him to deliver you, but because you will not return to him from your rebellion, his word says that he will not hear you. He'll not hear your cry. But there is good news for those of you who will hearken to him and return to him to become as he is. He will deliver you, and he will apply the atoning sacrifice that he set up through his Son to cover your transgressions. It is going to be a wonderful time to live on this earth with his kingdom ruling here. Things will be done the way that they were supposed to be, and evil will be purged out. It will be an awesome time to live indeed, and it is just about here, but first the earth needs to be cleansed. It is sad that most of you are so full of pride that you will not hearken to him without him humbling you. It is sad that you will not cry aloud and spare not with me to warn others that his wrath is coming and why he is sending it. Yet he knew it would come to this after he finished his temple. His word says so. He knew that the free will that he had to give us in order to accomplish building his temple would result in this. It had to be this way. And now that his temple is built, he will cleanse the earth in order to continue building the latter harvest into his family. However this 50 days unfolds, it is going to continue to get worse, and the world will come unglued at the seams. He is bringing all nations together for battle, and the prophecies are unfolding. Not believing it is true will not keep it from happening. The question that you have to ask yourself is, if you are going to be one of the 3.33%, is how much calamity will you endure before you turn from your rebellion? The acclamation has been made. Who will you stand with? Like I said, I would get busy trying to find a witness whom Yahweh Elohim's word testifies to stand with, since his word says that he will restore all things through one end-time servant. And just maybe, these all things just might include his 30-day month. We certainly have entered into a final showdown of truth versus lies, and of good versus evil, and of that which is wrong versus our Elohim's righteousness. If you want to stand with measuring truth and righteousness apart from measuring it with his word, deciding right from wrong for yourselves, you will be of the 96.666%. The mouth of Yahweh has spoken this through his servants the prophets. When the dust settles, only those standing with and desiring the truth will be left standing. And his Son testified that his word is the truth, and it is the measuring rod that his temple was built with. The 50-day count has begun, and the final showdown is at hand. Thus saith Yahweh Elohim.